Nühaus. Nühaus.
Hello, good morning. Christopher Boylan here from the Plantech Nühaus design and build team. Today we are back at our previous project at James McCormick Gardens. We're joined by our previous client, Pat Flynn, and his partner Zoran, who have kindly led us back to their property for an interview and some photos and video of the before and after extension here and renovation. And Pat's going to answer some questions for us and give us some insight into the whole process. And for anybody considering a design and build project that's new to this sort of process and system, they might get some insight and some good points to note before they start. So Pat, thanks for joining us. Could you tell us a bit about your project and the history of the site and what drove you to start with the design and build project?
Sure, thanks Chris. So the history of the house and the site. So we've been renting in this area since 2009. We love the area, there's great amenities. We're right next to the beach here. Hoth is just down the road and there's a great cycle lane into work if you want to cycle to work, which we both do. We bought this house in 2014 and effectively we didn't do anything with it between 2014 and deciding to go ahead with this renovation. So the house was quite dated. Nothing had been done to it since the 80s. An extension had been built probably at that time. The insulation wasn't great, so it had probably the lowest energy rating in the BER energy rating. And the house was quite dark, so there wasn't a lot of light coming into the house. In 2020, we got married, and then that weekend, the COVID lockdown started and we were all shut in at home. So over the space of that year, that first year of COVID, we were stuck in this house, first glorious summer of COVID and then into the winter. And effectively we were kind of comparing and contrasting our house with, you know, it was lovely weather outside. In here it could be quite dark and cold. And in the winter we were running our heating 24/7 just to keep the temperature up in the house. We knew we wanted to change the house anyway, to redecorate at least, to put our own stamp on it. But we also wanted to, from living in the house, it was painfully obvious that what we also wanted to do was make sure that we got the insulation right and make sure that, you know, we could live in comfort in the house.
How did you come across the Plantech Nühaus design and build team?
We came across them first, I think, in the Irish Times. There was an article in one of the supplements of the Irish Times and that caught our eye. That was from somebody who was also in North Dublin who got some work done, and the work looked good from the photos and the couple were extremely pleased with the work that was done. And then we were looking around to see who had done similar work on a similar type of house.
Yeah.
And I think that that was one of the projects that Plantech and Nühaus had done previously. They'd also worked on a council house.
Yeah.
Maybe on the south side of the city, I believe.
Yeah.
But all of these houses are essentially the same design.
Yeah.
So we said at least they've got experience of working with these kinds of houses.
Yeah.
So that's what put us in mind of Nühaus and Plantech, and that's why we got in contact in the first place.
I think the project was Portmarnock, Patricia and Tom at Portmarnock, and Blackrock was the project at the old Dublin Corporation home in Rockford Park. But yeah, they were both featured in the Irish Times. I remember coming to the house here originally and meeting yourself and Pat, and you had an old flat roof extension, a typical sort of 1970s, 80s build with a torch on felt. I mean, it's obvious and it's typical for us to walk into a property which needs electrical, plumbing and an upgrade in general. So this was sort of a demolition and new build. Obviously with two of you here, you did not need to go huge with an extension. You're mid-terrace, so we looked at the brainstorming of the light and getting the better position of the kitchen for you. And obviously the design team came up with this concept of the courtyard, a mini courtyard. Yeah. It's more of a light tunnel, but you've decorated it well with planting and some green screening. How do you find the design and how did you find the design process in general before the building work started?
I think that was a real positive surprise for us. Our objectives from this renovation were to basically improve the BER rating and have a renovation of the house. So quite basic to begin with. But once we started speaking to yourself, Chris, and Plantech, you came with some ideas about how we could actually redesign the house. And that was to do with also getting some more light in, which was also something that we wanted to do. And what was great about Plantech is you listened to what we said, what our objectives were, and you came with, I think, 4 different designs. And I think that was a really tough part of the process because they all looked really great. They were a real positive surprise.
Yeah.
I was like amazed at what could be done with such a small space.
Yeah, and even for a mid-terrace home, you do have at least 3 or 4 options, and the kitchen is a big part of that. I know the old kitchen was in the back of the old extension, and it's more for practical purposes for connections and services. You had a manhole here and drainage. We're relocating the kitchen to a central part of the house. Is a big factor in the new design and bringing light back into the property. And you can see it here with the skylights, the new modular flat roof, and today it's great. We have a big back garden, and you get the benefit of all of that. So yeah, it's great to see that the design actually built and the difference it makes before and after. It's great. On the build process and the site crew, before it actually started, after the plans, you had a process of costings and estimates from the estimator. Were you happy with the financing and the budgeting of your project, or do you have any comments on the estimating end of things before you start the contracts and start the building process?
Absolutely. So we got very detailed plans of what the building work was going to entail, what the costs were going to be, and a total cost. And looking back at the project, one of the amazing things is that we didn't overrun on cost at all. So I think that must be something that's quite extraordinary for building projects in this day and age. So having detailed costs and a total cost that stayed static, that was something that was really important in terms of making sure that we had enough money to fund the build.
And the build itself, Pat, once it started, you obviously had to be out of the house for a period, and all your valuables had to be moved out. How did you find that process of organising your belongings and your valuables and being out of the house for up to 4 or 5 months?
Well, it's always stressful to take all your belongings and partly decide what you're going to dump and what you're going to move somewhere else and where you're going to move it. Also a useful process to go through because, I haven't used this for since we moved into the house. Why are we keeping it? So there was a certain amount of, that was a useful process to go through as well. Yeah, I mean, that was probably something that wasn't the easiest thing to do, to live somewhere else for a while and change your commute and change your routine.
Yeah.
But that was something that I think was necessary given the extent of the building that we were going to do.
Yeah.
I don't think it would have been possible to continue living in the house, given that essentially the whole house was gutted. And, was being totally renovated.
Yeah, and it's a part of the process that a lot of homeowners do not anticipate. They think it's a back extension or a bathroom renovation on the upper level, and they can stay here. The family can live in the front room or something. Yeah. But you seeing the site visits and you've seen the process on site every week or 2 weeks. You visit from Kildare with us, and you have steel beams, you've open back wall elevations, you've got exposed walls.
Yeah,
it's dust. There's builders' traffic. It's just not habitable.
And the work got going really quickly because I remember we came. I don't know whether it was a formal site visit or we just wanted to come and see the house for sort of sentimental reasons.
Yeah.
I think that was like 2 weeks after the building work was starting, and we came out and we got a bit of a shock because I think we walked through the door and there was nothing at the back. There was just like you went straight through into the garden, and we're like, it's too late to go back now.
Yeah. And it sort of spiraled here into a major renovation. I know your main brief was the back extension and the energy rating.
Yeah.
But we ended up doing the insulation, triple glazed windows, your beautiful orange front door, the heating system, the electrics. It was all upgraded essentially. There's very little of the original house which weren't affected.
Yeah. I think our thinking was, because we had done some work on the house before, we did replace the flat roof. And that cost a certain amount of money, but that was something that was necessary to do. But what that taught us was, well, you could spend a lot of money doing piecemeal things, but what you wouldn't get out of that was something that you're actually happy with in the end.
Yeah.
Right. You still have kind of the old house that you may not be completely happy with the way it's laid out and the way it works. Right. So I think we decided we were going to do one big change once and for all. And I think that's what came out of the planning process with yourself, Chris, and with Plantech. We were thinking as you were showing us the designs, and we were thinking, okay, it's going to cost a little bit more, You know what? It's an investment for our future in this house.
So Pat, this is the front of the new renovation, and obviously the orange door is distinctly obvious.
Yeah.
And the external insulation with the granite sills. So it's a big transformation from the before situation.
Yeah.
How do you find how the house looks, and are you happy with how it sits on the street?
It looks great. I mean, the external walls look amazing. The door is definitely eye-catching. We get a lot of comments about that from visitors and neighbours. And actually, you mentioned the granite sills. That's something that we weren't expecting somehow, but when we moved into the house, we're really amazed by them and really happy with them.
Very good. Okay. Let's have a look at the back elevation and the extension.
Great. That's a big change from before.
Yeah.
I mean, the house was very dark at one time
Yeah.
when we were living here before we got the extension and renovation done.
The famous courtyard.
The famous courtyard, yeah, that's one of the things that made us choose this particular design. We had 3 or 4 different designs to choose from.
Yeah.
The courtyard was kind of really eye-catching in that design, and that's kind of what made us choose this one.
Yeah.
At one stage we were talking about storing our bikes in here. That would have been criminal, I think. We got a chance here to bring some of the garden, which is a real feature of this house, into the house as well, and have some greenery in here as well.
And then obviously you have the modern flat roof with the 2 large skylights, so you've got bigger volume in the room here and the open plan space. We've moved the kitchen to the centre, and we've got the large sliding door down to the 40 or 50 metre long back garden, which is great.
Yeah, higher ceilings, more light coming in, bigger patio door. It just makes the whole space feel a lot bigger.
Yeah. And working with yourself and Zora and Pat, both professionals, you understood the professional architectural input, the engineering input, and the value of the extras or the optional extras, which were the insulations, the triple glazed windows, the heating systems. You don't have to get that energy upgrade, but you seen the benefits of it, and now that the home is fully renovated, you have invested in that. Can you see the benefit of the optional extras and investing that little bit more at that point of contract?
Have we seen the benefits of the additional investment? We absolutely have. When we got our BER rating redone after the renovation, we got a BER rating of A2. As you know, gas, electricity prices have all gone up in the last couple of years, so I think it's really helped to keep our energy costs down. The heating isn't on 24/7 anymore. The house really retains its heat. That's a huge advantage of the great insulation that we put in. Might have cost a little bit more, but I think that we're going to save over the long term.
How did you find that whole process of communication and keeping you in the loop of what was happening, and the whole team on site here, how they were conducting themselves, implementing the building works and dealing with the neighbours, traffic, those sort of details that a lot of people do not see? How did you find the Nühaus team on site?
I was really pleasantly surprised with how that worked out. We had a lot of interaction with the Nühaus team. They kept us updated in terms of providing photographs of the site, inviting us to site visits, kept us involved in decisions. A lot of that over email or telephone calls, but very interactive and always keeping us up to speed. I think one of the concerns we had was, we live in quite a small neighbourhood, and there's a lot of problems with traffic access outside. And one thing that was really pleasant to hear was when we moved back in, one of our neighbours said they were very clean and tidy, and that was something that was really reassuring. I think there's always going to be an element of disruption when you're doing construction work, but I think that Nühaus did their best to make sure that disruption to neighbours was kept to a minimum.
Yeah. And for anybody considering a new design and build and project, do you have any advice for anybody considering to extend or renovate their home?
Yes, I would definitely engage in the planning process. That was something that was really useful for us. We got a number of different designs to choose from, and it was great to have that professional input into the process. Yeah,
I think the 3D videos that we prepared and the walkthrough, the virtual walkthrough, helped with the kitchen layout and understanding the courtyard and modern flat roof design and putting yourself in the building before it actually started.
The 3D videos, that definitely helped to get us into the mind space of what the house would look like afterwards. Yeah. And I think also those videos, it was during COVID, remember? It was also an opportunity to get to see the team and their professionalism, and that came out in those interactions as well. Backup service was great. In terms of the build and the completion itself, there was very little to do in terms of snag. some issues perhaps with grouting in the bathroom, but other than that, nothing. But the team was quick to come back, very responsive and very professional team.
Thanks very much for letting us back into your home, and I know you wanted to see the back of us, but we just like to come back and see the images, see how the family are settling in, have a quick chat with you, and we're just so pleased that you've renovated with us, you've built with us, and the end result here is beautiful. We wish yourself and Zoran all the best, and thanks very much again for everything that you helped us with.
Thank you very much, Chris. Great to have you back. It was a great experience.
Nühaus, yeah.